Good morning, students. So after getting back your assignment book, so please open your assignment book and also turn to page 25 of your science book. 你本書嘅第25頁. So we are now going to talk about the chapter 4 assignment, and probably we shall go through all questions. So to make sure that we all understand the questions and the answer. So please copy the MC questions answer first. Okay, MC question 3, 4, 5, 6 is A, B, C. So let's start from questions 3 and 4. This experiment is about the enzyme catalase, and probably it is given that the catalase can speed up the breakdown of hydrogen peroxide 雙氧水 and release oxygen. And the purpose of this experiment is to show that whether a certain plant tissue contains catalase or not. 究竟有某一款嘅植物嘅組織係咪真係有呢款 enzyme 呢？ So we have this experiment. For test tube 1 and 2, they both contain the hydrogen peroxide solution. And for test tube 1, it contains the fresh plant tissues, so it's living. And for the boiled plant tissue in test tube 2, so it implies that the tissue is dead. 咁啊暗示咗係死㗎啦，因為都烚過啦。So then we take a look the overall equation. The hydrogen peroxide is broken down into water and oxygen gas. So remember that the oxygen gas is the product we are going to measure. And also we need an enzyme to speed up the reaction. So it's a simple table to summarize the experiment. Test tube 1, hydrogen peroxide plus living tissues. Test tube 2, hydrogen peroxide plus boiled tissues. So what we need to think about is the enzyme in the plant tissues. For test tube 1, it should be normal. And for test tube 2, probably even there is enzyme. In test tube 2, I mean in the tissues, the enzymes are denatured due to the boiling, due to the very high temperature. So in test tube 2, probably it's just like that. We did not add the enzymes and we did not add the plant tissue because it shows that it's dead. Okay, so just like add nothing. Okay, add nothing into the test tube. So probably the expected result. Test tube 1 bubbles released, and test tube 2 we can see that the boiling will prevent the bubbles from being releasing. So let's take a look on question 3. Question 3, the student observed that a lot of gas bubbles were released in test tube 1 but not in test tube 2. So the question is that in order to conclude that the plant tissue contains catalase, so what additional steps should be taken? Step 1, okay, the option 1 is correct because what we are going to measure is the product, and this time the product is oxygen. So just take a look to the overall equation. As I said before, the product, if we know that there is the appearance of the products, that means the equation is undergoing, is taking place. 個化學反應應該進行緊啦，因為我哋見得到咧，佢嘅產物咧係出現咗嘅。So the case is that containing oxygen, that means the hydrogen peroxide is being broken down. 咁啲雙氧水都係俾人拆解緊先會出氧氣㗎嘛，係咪？ So option 1 is correct. And for the option 2, we need to set up a tube containing water and the fresh plant tissues. In this option, is based on an argument and challenge from others. So let's take a look of the test tube 1. Fresh plant tissue in the hydrogen peroxide solution. So probably someone will challenge you that the oxygen bubbles releasing is not due to the hydrogen peroxide solution. 根本咧放氧氣都唔關啲雙氧水事嘅，其實咧係你個 fresh plant tissue 自己放氧氣。So someone will argue that probably the oxygen is released by the fresh plant tissues, but not the enzyme in the fresh plant tissues. It can speed up the breakdown of hydrogen peroxide and then release oxygen. They may just argue that, no, just the fresh plant tissue, somehow they can release oxygen. So, that's why we need to do the option 2. Set up a tube containing water and fresh plant tissues. So the point is that, in this case, we remove the substrate. Okay, remove the substrate. So probably the point is that it shows that if there is no bubble released, that means even there is the fresh plant tissues inside the tube, but there is no reaction at all because there is no substrate. Okay, so for the step option 3, set up a tube containing hydrogen peroxide but no plant tissue. Probably it is not a kind of additional steps. We can do it, but it's not additional. Why? Because this table. Test tube 2, we use the boiled tissues, and the enzyme inside the boiled tissue should be denatured due to boiling. So probably that's why I said before, it's just like that. We did not add anything. Okay? So,咁其實 test tube 你見得到咧，你都煲過個 tissue 啦，都好似冇加嘢咁滯啦，係咪？即係的確你掉咗啲嘢落去，但係其實嗰個 plant tissue 嘅特性已經俾你除去晒啦嘛，係咪？ So probably for step 3, option 3, is just a repeated step, okay, for test tube 2. So it's not an additional steps. So that's why the answer should be 1 and 2 only, is A. So for question 4 should be easier. So you can highlight the questions. When gas bubbles stop coming out from test tube 1, it implies the reaction is complete. And then Joyce add more hydrogen peroxide into the tube. That means more substrate are added. And then finally, she observed that gas bubble were produced again. That means the reaction starts again. So, what is the property of enzymes can be implied from this observation. So probably it should be A. Enzymes are reusable because once the reaction is complete, the enzyme remains unchanged. And when we add more substrate to the enzyme, the reaction can start again. So question 4 is A. So let's talk about questions 5 and 6. So in this question, I would like to suggest you that by reading the question, probably it's quite hard, quite difficult to understand the whole meaning because you cannot imagine the picture. So I suggest you to draw some diagram for yourself. 咁有陣時做 Enzyme 呢啲題目咧，咁即係畫下圖會好啲嘅。如果唔係你齋睇字咧，你完全唔知佢做乜嘢嘅。So in this case, you can see that 2 boiling tubes containing hydrogen peroxide and catalase solution, they are put in the water bath for 25 degrees Celsius for 10 minutes. And then the contents of 2 tubes were then mixed and then maintained at the same temperature. Okay, so you can see in this case, 10 minutes later, we mix A and B, the catalase solution and the hydrogen peroxide solution to mix it, and also put it in 25 degrees Celsius. And then what we are going to measure is measure the amount of oxygen released, okay, for 5 minutes. So you can obtain this graph, okay, afterwards. So in this graph, what you need to know is that the accumulative amount of oxygen. So you can see that it's an accumulative amount. Just keep adding up, 係一個累積嘅意思。So probably for this data, you can see that and probably you can see so let's start for question 5 and 6. So in this question, the first point I want to tell you is that by reading the question, probably it's quite hard for us to know what is it talking about. So I suggest you to draw some pictures for you to understand the question. So in this case, you can see that we have two boiling tubes containing hydrogen peroxide solution and also the catalyst solution, and we put it in the 25 degrees Celsius for 10 minutes. This is the first paragraph and first diagram. And then after 10 minutes, we mix the content together and then put it in the same temperature. And then what we are going to do is to measure the amount of oxygen released for 5 minutes. So we have this graph. In this graph, what we are going to see is the accumulative amount of oxygen. Accumulative, that means by adding up, okay? Adding by adding. In Chinese is 累積, okay? 累積. So that means for this red line, you can see probably the accumulative amount of oxygen reaches the maximum level. So what does it imply? It implies, 暗示咗, it implies the reaction is finished. So the case is that for question 5, the line levels off at the 3rd minute. At the 3rd minute, level off, okay, reaches the maximum level. So in this case, reaction stops at the 3rd minute. The reaction stops at the 3rd minute. The reaction reaches the maximum. So probably we have two pairs of answer, A, B, and C, D. The case is that why A and B seems to be correct because the first sentence, the reaction stops at the 3 minute. But no, Mr. Leung, you have just said that accumulative amount just reached the maximum level. Sorry, because for C and D it talks about the reaction rate, but not the accumulative amount of oxygen. So if you want to see that the reaction rate, when is it maximum, it should be here, the high slope. Okay, you can see that maybe, for example, from 0 minute to 1 minute, okay, the slope is like this. And for 1 minute to 2 minutes, the slope is like this. But for 2 to 3 and then 3 to 4, probably the slope is very, very small. So the case is that if you really want to calculate the rate of reaction, you should calculate the slope in this case, not just in this case. So A, B are the possible answer. So the reaction stops at the 3rd minute because catalyst has been used up. That means the enzyme has been used up. And the option B, because the hydrogen peroxide has been used up. So the case is that substrate has been used up. And we all know that the enzyme, they will not be used. They can be reused. Okay, they are reusable. They remain unchanged after the reaction. So option A is wrong. Okay, so we can get it. Option B, the substrate has been used up. So that's why we do not obtain any oxygen more. Okay, any more oxygen because the accumulative amount of oxygen reaches the maximum level. So for question 6, it talks about the same experiment which was repeated, but the content were kept at 35 degrees Celsius. So the following questions we need to think about: substrate concentration, any change? No change because we just used the same experiment. And also, if the substrate concentration did not change, so the amount of final product also did not change, okay, because probably you can see from this formula, a certain amount of substrate, it will be used to produce a certain amount of product. 你有幾多 substrate 都係整返幾多嘅氧氣嘅啫，或者個 product 嘅啫，係咪？唔會整多，唔會整少噶嘛。So in this case, you can see that since the substrate concentration did not change, so the amount of final product also will not change. And the third question, enzyme concentration. Okay, any change? Also no change. So the case is that the same enzyme concentration, the same substrate concentration. So we can see that we will not produce more product. So the maximum level is limited. So for the in this case, options A, B, D are eliminated because you can see that, for example, in option B and D, you can see the curve is higher than the curve of 25 degrees Celsius. But for the option C, you can see that the maximum level, probably they are the same, but it reaches the maximum level earlier. Because why? Because it was kept at 35 degrees Celsius. 佢擺咗35度啊嘛，35度嘅時候 higher temperature, higher kinetic energy for the enzyme to collide with the substrate and then form the enzyme substrate complex. And then it will produce the product earlier, faster, so it can reach the maximum level earlier. And then we talk about the question 7. For question 7, probably in the video, I also give you the hints. So the first hint is the focus on the shape of the enzyme molecules. So you can see that our enzymes are specific. And if we observe the overall shape of the enzyme after the reaction, you can also see that the enzymes are reusable. Okay, so the point is that if you need to state one property of the enzyme T, you should either state enzymes are specific or enzymes are reusable. But many students, they just state the property but miss another point, explain. You need to use the figure to explain why the enzymes are specific or why the enzymes are reusable. Let's see the answer. Probably you just need to copy one of the answer, just one pair. Enzyme T is reusable because the explanation, because it remains unchanged after the reaction, one pair. Or the other pair, the action of enzyme T is specific because only substance R and S can fit into the active site of the enzyme T to form substance U. So probably for the first case, reusable after the reaction remain unchanged, state and explain. And the active site is specific because only the substance R and S can fit into this shape and to form the enzyme substrate complex. Okay, so remember that the question word state and explain. Don't miss either one of them. And for question 7b, so probably in this graph, I suggest you to add 3 lines. Okay, one horizontal line and 2 vertical lines. So probably the red line, the maximum level, means that the reaction has already complete because no more substance U will be produced. So that means the reaction ends. It's over. 完咗㗎啦，個反應已經。So without chemical X and with chemical X, so you can see that without chemical X, it needs shorter time to reach the maximum level. That means it takes shorter time to complete the reaction. And for the chemical X is added, the situation is that it takes longer time to complete the reaction. So you can see that the effect of chemical X slows down the synthesis of substance U. Or if you say inhibit, that's also okay. Inhibit the synthesis of substance U. But most of the students, they miss the second part. You need to quote, okay, you need to use the evidence from the graph. So the evidence is that the time taken for the conversion to complete was longer when chemical X was added. Okay, that's what I said just few moments ago. Longer time is needed, okay, to complete the reaction. So that's the simple idea for 7b1. So for 7b2, it talks about the application of chemical X. So you can see that chemical X inhibit enzyme T. So enzyme T cannot work, so probably the whole equation will be stopped. No more substance U. And it's given that substance U is very important for protein synthesis. And protein synthesis, I mean the protein, okay? The protein is very important for example, growth and repair, for making cell membrane, for making enzymes. So probably if the bacteria, the enzyme T inside the bacteria is inhibited, so no more substance U, no more protein, so that's why the chemical X can be used as a drug. Now no student mention chemical X can be a drug, and then to inhibit, to slow down the growth of the bacteria. And that is the 7b2. So let's talk about question 8, part A. So this experiment is about the rennin, okay, a kind of protease, because it's acting on the milk, okay, so it's a kind of protease, the enzyme acting on protein. So part A, describe the pattern in the result. So probably what you need to write is the general tendency of the result shown in the table. 我要嘅係一個簡單嘅趨勢啫。So you don't need to describe each temperature or from 20 degrees Celsius and then blah 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 blah. You don't need to. You just describe the general tendency of increasing temperature. The time for milk to clot decreases and then increases again, and it will be totally fine because you are not asked to explain, just describe. And for part B and C, is a little bit easier. For part B, it asks for the optimum temperature. So you can see that the optimum temperature should be 40 degrees Celsius based on the result shown in the table. Just based on the result. You don't need to use your textbook. Maybe you may say that the textbook said that the optimum temperature for most enzymes should be 40 to 45 degrees Celsius, but in this table I cannot see it. So can I make it as 30 to 40 degrees Celsius? No, because in this table we have the 20 degrees Celsius, 30 degrees Celsius, but do not have the 31, 32, 33 degrees Celsius. So we cannot guess, okay? We can only use the table. And also part C, at 70 degrees Celsius, there is no reaction because the enzymes are denatured, or you can say that the active site of the enzyme molecules change shape. So for question 10, question 10 is talks about another kind of protease, catalyze the breakdown of protein. So the experiment is talking about we prepare a protein by mixing a milk powder with the distilled water to get a right cloudy suspension, and then we add the protease to the suspension, and then probably if the enzyme it can really work, it will change the protein from white and cloudy to become colorless. Okay, that means clear. In the question it says clear. So in this case, in case you forget, protein is broken down into amino acid, the basic unit. Okay, so for question 10 part A, why the protein can be broken down and then from white and cloudy to become clear because the insoluble proteins are broken down into products, amino acids. Okay, if you can write amino acids, it would be better, and amino acids which dissolves in the solution. Or you can say that insoluble proteins are broken down into products such as amino acid which are colorless. That means from cloudy white proteins to become colorless is also okay. So it's part A. And for part B1, the tricky point is that by using the information, you need to describe the effect of pH on the activity of the trypsin. That means the enzyme. So what you need to know is that by increasing the pH, so what will be the effect on the activity of trypsin? So you can see that from the table, you have the time taken for suspension to become clear, 10.82 minutes, okay, etc., etc. So many students, they wrote, when increasing the pH, the time taken for suspension to become clear becomes shorter. The time taken becomes shorter. So probably it seems very, very correct, but it's not correct for this question. I repeat, their answer is the time taken for suspension to become clear is short. Decreases if we increase the pH, and then the time taken for suspension to become clear increases again when increasing the pH of suspension, just like this question. Okay, just like this question, the time, okay, the time, but in this question it doesn't ask about the time, it asks about the activity. So you need to change the concept a little bit. At pH 8, the trypsin is most active, and between pH 5 and pH 8, the activity of trypsin increases. So you may think that, no, Mr. Leung, I'm just talking about the time taken is a kind of indication of the enzyme activity. Yes, it's an indication for the enzyme activity. 咁呢個時間呢，即係點樣快啲變咗做透明呢？咁的確係可以反映到呢個 enzyme 嘅活躍程度嘅，啱嘅。但係題目係真係問緊個 enzyme 嘅活躍程度啊嘛，你就可以答我時間，咁咪錯咯，係咪？ So what you need is really to mention the activity of the enzyme, but not using the other parameter, using another factor to reflect this data. Okay, so you know the concept of this question. So for part B2, probably most students, they can write this part and this part. That means the second sentence and the first sentence. The conformational change of the active site of the enzyme molecules or the nature. So the substrate and the enzyme, they cannot combine together to form the enzyme substrate complex. But probably, okay, the most important sentence they missed. Unsuitable pH breaks some bonds in the enzyme molecules. So the case is that after we talk about the chapter 5, that means the human diet, we know that amino acids, they can form bonding, okay, between each other, and then to form the proteins. So probably this bonding will be broken by the unsuitable pH. So probably most students miss this sentence. So if you have just written the second and the first sentence, you can just copy the first sentence, is okay. Unsuitable pH breaks some bonds in the enzyme molecules. So for question 10 part C, suggest why the experiment was carried out in a water bath at 45 degrees Celsius. So in this question, it only asks why this step is so important. Why do we need to keep it at 45 degrees Celsius, but not ask why the enzyme can work best at 45 degrees Celsius. So many students, they mention this. 45 degrees Celsius is the optimum temperature for the enzyme. Yes, it's correct. Okay, it's correct. It's true, but not for this question. 呢句說話係啱嘅，但係唔係答緊題目啊嘛，係咪？ So the point is that the answer should be this is to keep the temperature of the reaction constant. So that means the temperature is the controlled variables in this case. So beware of that. The answer should be this sentence, but not this, because you may have misunderstood the question. So that's why you answer why the enzyme work best at 45 degrees Celsius. So, and that's the end of our assignment explanation. So, hope you can continue improve.